Tunarudia nyuma ya Teddy, sawa? Ai! Teddy! Odhiambo! Osano! Jeya! Do hereby!
My name is KK Lagat. I have a guest with me in the studio.
My name is Hilary Musoma, Wakili, a fourth year student at the Kenyatta University, undertaking a bachelor's degree in law. For the purposes of this election, I was a candidate for the position of school congressperson.
Maybe you can tell us more about this regalia, because I can see many people are not in that regalia and you are the only one in this regalia.
Thank you so much. Different professions have their own different ways of identifying the core people operating in the profession. So for lawyers, they usually have the robe, the black robe, they have the lawyer's wig, and the one I'm putting on is called a jabot, yeah, or otherwise called the lawyer's bib. It is just a way of identifying lawyers from the other members of the public.
You are a law student.
Yes.
How is the course?
Law is interesting. It can only be interesting to those who are passionate about everything that happens around, and those that are so much interested in following up on current affairs. Otherwise, if you are a disinterested person, you'll definitely be disinterested in the course.
Law, leadership, politics. What is the relationship between the three?
Law, leadership, and politics. I would say this, that you cannot get to leadership in our political structures. You cannot get to leadership minus going through the political process. And while going through the political process, there are laws that you have to abide with. And after you get to the leadership, after you've gone through the political process, getting to the leadership, there are also laws that you must abide with as a leader. At the leadership apex of it, you will also realize that as a leader, you will also be expected to come up with proposals, to come up with legislations, to come up with laws. So the three are interlinked, and at no point can they be separated.
Law, regulations, and the constitution go hand in hand.
Yes, they do.
And maybe, Wakili, what motivated you into the leadership aspect of life?
I have always believed that I've been born a leader, raised a leader, and I have seen a deficit of good leadership, and I have seen a critical mass of my age mates and a critical mass of people who have had the potential of becoming leaders but ended up wasting their potential because they have been discouraged, or because they feel that it's not a worth trial of it. But I can say that with the youthfulness in me and with the class of people who are at my age mates, we shouldn't be frail, or we shouldn't fail from getting into the leadership space. Because if we all fail, then none of us will be the leader, and we'll have no leaders. At some point, each of us requires somebody to give us direction. As a youth, I get motivated to give out direction, and as giving out direction means that I'll be occupying the leadership space.
And maybe, do you have a legal mentor in the legal field?
Yes, I have a mentor. I look up to Mutula Kilonzo Jr.,
The governor
for Makueni County. Yes.
Makueni County. Yes. And maybe you have been elected as the school congress person for the Parklands campus, KU. What are you going to do for the Parklands people?
The position of the school congress person mostly as we run it in Parklands and as it is enshrined in the Kusa Constitution, revised 2021, is really focused on addressing academic affairs that relate to the school. Parklands campus has various challenges to do with how classes are run. I also intend to address matters affecting clubs and societies, and I also want to bring up a rejuvenated law school. As you know, University of Nairobi is one that has been mentioned in almost most number of times when somebody wants to talk about the legal space. Not because University of Nairobi has anything more special than Kenyatta University, but merely because the University of Nairobi was the sole law school then. But I want to, in my leadership, I want to put Kenyatta University School of Law at the pedal space.
Did you watch the legal battle in this year's general election?
Yes, I did.
What lesson did you learn as a law student?
A lesson I learned from the presidential election petition 2022 is that you can never win a case minus substantive evidence. And one lesson I learned from the presidential petition is that the evidence required to be presented in a presidential election petition is not just like that of a mere civil case, because its threshold is way above that of a civil case, but not above that required in criminal law. That means that it is there intermediate.
Lawyers will tell you the law is very clear. And maybe, do a lawyer need a lawyer?
Yes, lawyers need lawyers. Why? The law is so wide. You can never be an expert of all fields within the legal sphere. That means that you can only specialize at some 2 or 3 fields, but at some point you require a lawyer specialized in a different field. For instance, myself, I see myself specializing into the corporate world, or if not, then maybe get into the judiciary and become a judge. On the other hand, I'll have a lawyer who is specialized in transactions, conveyancing. If I'd want to purchase some land somewhere or transact or transfer some property, I'd require a lawyer because myself would not like to specialize in conveyancing.
Today has been an election day right here in Kenyatta University. How has been the voting exercise?
The voting exercise at Kenyatta University School of Law particularly has been extremely smooth. The process began at exactly 8:29 a.m. because normally the voting should have started at 8:00 a.m. and ended at 4:00 a.m. to compensate for the time that was lost between 8 and 8:29 a.m. The time was added, 29 minutes were added to the 4 p.m. deadline, so our voting ended at 4:29 p.m. The election process was seamless. As the process is, one gets into the polling station, gives out the school ID for identification or any other relevant documents that would identify the particular student as a student who is bona fide. As a voter, the student is shown the name on the voters register. The name is cancelled. The student goes on to be given the 3 ballot papers. And for the sake of law school, you're being given 3 ballot papers, one for the School of Law congressperson, and then 2 each of a delegate, male and female. You then proceed to the polling booth, where you secretly mark the ballot papers in favor of the candidates you wish to elect into office. And then you fold the ballot paper and drop it within the right box. Thereafter, you proceed to have a mark where the indelible ink is marked on your last finger. And then you walk out of the polling station. And that is as smooth as that was.
Wakili has just explained how the exercise followed the law, the regulations, the code of conduct for conducting elections, and how the constitution stipulated that the election should be carried. Wakili, you had competitors.
Yes.
What's differentiating your competitors and you?
I think, as I've told you before, for you to get to leadership, you must go through the political process. I think the political process also differentiates those who win the election and those who unfortunately fail to win the election. What differentiated me and my opponent majorly was how we conducted our campaigns. My opponent was quite a little bit slower in terms of releasing their manifesto, and when their manifesto came, the manifesto was quite much questionable as compared to mine, and the voters would analyze each of these manifesto and would realize and differentiate that which is realistic from that which would be termed as hot air.
You mentioned hot air, meaning you know what happened during the general election.
Yes.
What is the difference between the Kenya general election and the KUSA elections?
Well, the Kenyan general election, I would say that there is no much difference between the Kenyan general election and the KUSA election. The only difference is that the general election, we elect the president at the ballot, where a threshold of 50% plus 1 of the total vote cast, of the total valid vote cast, is required for a presidential candidate to be named as a winner, as opposed to KUSA elections, where the delegates and the congresses, and more particularly for the purpose of the elections in KUSA, the congresses are regarded as delegates for the purpose of election, as is stipulated in the KUSA Constitution 2017, revised 2021. The delegates come in to vote for the Student Governing Council. That is the difference between KUSA elections and the general election. And I think this mode of election has been adopted by all the universities in Kenya in accordance to the Universities Act 2016. There was an act which was established, and it was amended to incorporate the Duale law that provided that the universities should use the delegate system to elect their student governing councils. That is majorly the difference between what happens here and what happens in the national election. But the process is almost similar, and the threshold of candidates winning in that election is almost similar, because you realize even here in KUSA, the coalition that is going to win the election should have gotten at least 50% of the total votes cast plus 1 vote. That will bring it to 28 votes, if I got it right.
As we come to the end of this conversation and discussion, what message do you have for the Parklands students?
To the Parklands students, first, I'd really appreciate them for giving me this opportunity to serve them. I have conducted my campaigns, they have read my manifesto, I have explained my manifesto, they have seen my work, and I can assure them that I'm going to work for them and I'm going to leave a mark. And to whoever would want to fill this gap come next year would have a big task.
And maybe the final question, what lesson have you learned in this electoral process of Kenyatta University Students Association?
One lesson I've learned from the just concluded election is that an election is a process, and it requires preparation from both sectors. In this election, there are different players. There are the candidates, there are the overseers, who are the electoral commissioners, or who form part of the electoral commission. Each part and each party must play their part in order to enable a successful election transaction. Otherwise, where one party fails to adequately prepare, then it would jeopardize the efforts of the other to ensure a seamless process.
This is Duty TV, and my name is KK Lagat. Glad to have you, Wakili.
Thank you so much, KK.
Welcome.